Welcome to Superhumanize, the space where we remember the sacred intelligence of being human, where science meets soul, where consciousness meets curiosity, and where we play at the edge of possibility. Today's guest is a man who dances in paradox, a bridge between the form and the formless. He has woven beats into ceremonial ecstasy and guided rooms of souls back into the wild magic of play. Joshua Draper is a multidimensional artist, producer, improv alchemist, and musical shapeshifter. But more than that, he is a frequency holder for the sacred yes, that living impulse in us that says, I will risk being seen, I will play, I will trust the unknown. In a world that teaches us to compete, to compare, to perform, Joshua invites us into a different game, one where everyone wins, one where laughter is a medicine, intuition is a compass, and surrender is not defeat, but a doorway. So today we drop the script, we follow the thread, we grow through play.
Superhumanize. Accelerated evolution.
Joshua, welcome to the Superhumanize podcast. I'm so glad we get to connect. Thank you for making time today.
Absolutely. It's nice to meet you here, and I'm excited to chat.
Me too. We just had a little talk before we hit record, and you are such an interesting voice and influence in quite a few spaces that really resonate deeply with me and that I think are so timely. Humanity is in such need of voices and players. So I'm going to use that word on purpose, such as
I
yourself.
like it.
Because, one of the things that one of your offerings is actually play. And you've said that improv is the art of life. So I'd love for you to give our audience today a little bit of an overview of that particular offering, that particular medicine of yours, and also share with us what improv has taught you about the sacred unknown.
Oh my goodness, so much to talk on. Okay. Well, yes, my background, my sort of life art is the art of improvisation. I decided, 12 years ago that I was going to be studying improvisation very sincerely, and I moved to Chicago and I studied at the Second City Improv Conservatory and the Improv Olympic, which are sort of the world's best hubs to study and train in the art of improvisation. So that begs the question, what is improvisation exactly? And, this podcast is a great example. Like, in fact, every podcast that you do and almost every podcast that you might consume is entirely or at least largely improvised.
Mm.
I often ask people at my workshops, like, who here has done improv before? And no one raises their hand. And then I say, who here's had a conversation today? And everybody raises their hand. And was there any script to that conversation? No, there wasn't. Maybe you like to go out and dance on the weekend. When the music arrives and your body starts moving, is there any plan to that? It's not. It's an improv scene. Maybe you like to wake up in the morning and say a prayer to Source. Prayers are improvised. And maybe you like to have a little reflection to yourself at the end of the day and you write in your journal. What is any writing session if not a private improv session with yourself? So when you take sort of the eagle eye look at your own life, the way I like to say it is like, when we actually consider it, none of us really know what we're doing here on Earth. we're all kind of making it up as we go in reality. So our lives are improvised. And improv is the art of life, or the art of living and engaging with life itself. And you know, there's so many different tenets and principles just by doing these what appears to be simple games and exercises. What you're actually tapping into, what you're actually repping in your nervous system, in your mind, in your body, are the principles of things like fearlessness
Mm.
and cooperation and group listening and tapping into your inner voice of creativity and trusting others to be able to receive your inner truths. Now, isn't that the foundations of life and community itself? Ah,
Yes, yes, Joshua. And I really feel that what you said, fearlessness, uh, listening, group communication, all of these are things that are so needed. I sense so much, so many of us are in this state of fight or flight. Of course, we're also bombarded by all kinds of things, whether it's so-called news, whether it's environmental toxins or just toxicity of certain life situations. So we're constantly in this, very closed up state versus living from our true and full self. And people tend to, especially in our kind of culture, often tend to make fun, but not in a good way, of play, where play is truly so fundamental to human nature, to our expression. And I feel that a lot of parts of us have gone dormant, especially in adulthood, within the context of the particular culture that we're living in. And I'm curious, how does improvisation liberate these parts again? How does that work? How does that flow?
well, you set it up so perfectly because even in your body language and the way you set that up, you said the world is, full of contrast and conflict, and it makes us, we contract and we get into this place of protection. But the entire ethos around the art of improvisation, which is a welcoming, an openness, and the way to, quote unquote, fail at improv is to be in a closed out, no but posture, like an auric, energetic posture. So we can go through in this rejections place, like no but, rejecting even the things that are trying to come to us, the glories and successes and abundance that's trying to come to us. But if you're in a no but posture, you might not be able to receive it. So I literally think of improv as like an auric yoga. It's a practice, and it's sort of an exposure therapy to begin to train your mind, your nervous system, and your body into welcoming energies, to saying yes to what life brings you, and get you out of this state of contraction and into a place of reception, but ultimately play. Um, and it's through the improv's workshops that I host are designed to put you in safe, easy, applicable practices and exercises that will coax your body into this yesness, out of the contraction. They're easy wins, and you are essentially repatterning your mind and your nervous system with success, joy, happiness, community support, in a way that eventually bleeds into your life, because your life is improvised. now you're more available for your own life
Mm.
because you have a different relationship with it. You have a different auric posture. And it's made my life and so many people's life just richer. Like I said, because you're just more present for your own life. You're more available for your own life in that way.
Yes, it makes a lot of sense. And you get into coherence with your true nature. And via being authentically yourself, you also get into coherence with whatever you want to call it, the field, the universe, God. And I can imagine that potentially good side effect of this is just synchronicities. Things just start flowing, right? At least that's how I experience it in my life when I'm in coherence with my true self. I would love to learn more. Actually, can you walk us through? I know everybody's different, every session is different, but in general, let's say you get a group together, and how do you actually crack people open in the best of all ways when they
Mhm.
may be contracted initially?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, understanding that everybody's coming from their own lives in a different place in their story, whether they're super open or super shut down when they get there. The way I do my workshops are in a really safe way. So get people into small groups so that nobody's sort of up in front of the room right away. Create safe little mini pods for people. And then we just start, step one, the very essentials of improv, but it's the very essentials of life.
Mm-hmm.
We start with eye contact
Yes.
and intentions. And how do you share energy in your little pod without words at all? With no pressure, it's just eye contact and presence. First, we're repping eye contact and presence, making and build and lowering our walls, our defenses between just looking at each other
Mhm.
and just sharing energy with people, right? Then I like to move into developing this inertia of trust and this inertia of yesness. There's a classic improv game called Five Things, where you just sort of name the first five things that come to your mind. They don't even have to make sense at all. But at the end of every one you say, your little pod, everyone in the pod goes, yes. And it's like you kind of can't lose. It just builds this like trust with yourself, trust with your pod, and the response of like, I'm gonna say something I don't even know what I'm gonna say. And then no matter what, people go, yes.
Dopamine, right? Boop.
Dopamine,
Yeah.
yes. And so you build a sense of trust and safety with yourself and with others in your pod. And then from there, we work on how do we take our presence and our yesness and how do we work together as a team or as a community. And we'll do exercises where you now have to sort of work together to tell a story or to make a scene
Mm, mm, mm.
with the presence and the yesness that you have. So step by step with the basics, and then we make something together.
Mm. I mean, that alone in this playful way to learn how to flow with others, that is such a huge life skill, right? Especially in intense times. And the establishing presence and connection via eye gazing, I have experienced countless times in group settings when we are invited to actually gaze into each other's eyes. I also co-founded a women's community here in LA. Shout out to my circle and my sisters. I've experienced that when we actually get into a situation where we really connect with another human being by gazing into their eyes. It is so intimate. It is so beautifully vulnerable. So many, including myself, I mean, literally you're in tears or you start laughing. And it's so fascinating to me what that actually says about us and how we normally live our lives, right?
Hmm. Yeah, it's like, do you ever take time to really sense people? Like
Mm.
there's In improv, we say listening a lot, and listening is really important to life and to improv. But we really mean sensing
Mm.
beyond the words themselves. If you're really sensing what's happening in the scene, it's beyond the language. And so part of the training is to train people to use their senses to perceive each other, right? Like in improv is so good for relationships because improv is all about relationships and listening and responding, which is so much of relating. And sometimes maybe in a work or a personal relationship, you think, hey, how's it going? And somebody might say, oh, I'm fine. And if you're listening, you hear, I'm fine. But if you're sensing, you might say, oh, what's happening? Are you okay? Is it because I was late today? um, what's really underneath that, right? So part of the training is to go beyond the surface and tune in with each other.
Mm-hmm. Are
Mhm.
there any particular tools that you may be able to share for people how they can actually tune into their sensing when they're usually used to seeing, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so go beyond the listening, go beyond the observance. There's, in school we'd say it's not about the text or the script. It's about the subtext.
Mhm.
Not about the text, it's about the subtext. So look at like gestures. If someone says I'm fine, but their hand is by their face, it's usually an indicator that there's something else going on there. Tuning into gestures, postures, if someone's clenched, what's the old saying, like 80% of communication is actually in body language.
Mhm.
So much the body tells the story, right? So look into their eyes, check their body posture. The words help, but so much of it is actually underneath the words.
Right. And what you just shared also brings up in me the thinking about intuition, right? Because
Mhm.
sensing is also tied to intuition and trusting that inner voice, that type of perceiving. Um, is there maybe a specific place in your body where intuition and improv meet? And if so, what is it?
Mm, I love that question. Um, my answer for you is derived in another question.
Mhm.
Somebody once asked me, where do you feel God?
Hmm.
And God's a word for means something different to everyone, but I think everyone is familiar with like that feeling you get in your gut. Like trust your gut, the old adage, trust your gut. Well, this is the science behind like cranial sacral therapy. We often feel intuition in our gut. Our emotions, we feel them first in our gut. And then where do they show up? On our face,
Hmm.
right? So it's the connection between the gut and the face, the gut that receives and the face that expresses it, which is also the science behind craniosacral massage and therapy.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I don't have like a super refined answer for you, but I often check where their postures are. Is their gut tight or do they have a soft Buddha belly? Where's their tension in their face? Is there tension in my face? Am I relaxed?
Yeah. And it's funny how that can show up. I just remember, opportunities where, for example, speaking in front of a lot of people and such, where you think, oh, I'm so relaxed. And then all of a sudden you're in a situation, you're like, oh, my face is so tight. What's happening there, right?
Yes.
Um, anyhow, what I love about what you do, Joshua, is that, so many of us grow up and believing that play ends in childhood. and that's utter BS, right? Life is play. And something else that's always struck me is this was true for my upbringing. I grew up in a lot of different places in the world, different countries. What I learned about play was in general that a game must have winners and losers. But what if that's a lie? What and what you were sharing with us and what you're doing, it's collaborative play. What have you discovered about collaborative play?
Yeah, I did stand up for a while as well. And to me, it's the difference between like stand up and improv. Stand up can also often be very competitive. And even if you're on a show with a bunch of your friends, you want to win. You want to be the best comedian out there. But the nature of improv and group work is that you can only win if everyone's winning. It takes us all to succeed, to do it well. And then, what does well mean? Does it have to make people laugh to be successful? Not entirely. In fact, the name of the comedy Bible, as a lot of people call it, written by Sharna Halpern and Del Close, is called The Truth in Comedy. And page 1 basically says like the objective is not try to be funny. The objective is to be honest and authentic, because that's where the funniest things ultimately lie, is in the truth. And so there's a radical sense of speaking your truth together that is super fun and playful and creates this inertia of trust with each other, the inertia of play. And then, your point about, what happens to us? Like, do we stop playing when we get older? We don't, there's no reward system for play in a lot of our adult lives. In fact, maybe it's curtailed if you have a serious job. And even if in the world of like personal development spaces, right? Like so many personal development things are about breaking you down, and you end up crying for days. And that's important and super necessary sometimes too. But there's a lot of that, and I find that can become like anything, a bit of a treadmill where you're constantly breaking yourselves down in the healing trap, right? The recovery trap. But that's one way to do it. Like, I believe you can achieve personal development. You can rewire your neural pathways through remapping positive, playful, safe experiences. And they're just as effective in quantum healing like these other practices that are designed, to create other sort of sensory experiences. They just have to be held in a right way. And you really got to be free. Like, that's why, people go off to do a festival or something. It's like, oh, I just need like a good, fun, free experience. And then you come back to it and you feel so nourished. It's because you were in your play, you were in your yesness. Like whatever happened that weekend, you said yes to it and it unfolded. And like just being in that energy type is healing. It is natural. That's what I believe, at least.
I agree with that, Joshua. And I really feel that these Western constructs of success or competition suffocate our field of joy. And it's really, yeah, it's kind of sad to think about how in order to, it's great that we have the possibility to connect with that joy and play outside of our regular lives, but how beautiful would it be if that would be the undercurrent of our daily life, right? Versus taking short vacations into that and then plugging back into the hamster wheel. Yeah. I'm
Totally.
curious. Yes.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, Joshua. Are there any cultures or rituals you've studied and maybe even embodied that model a more sacred form of play?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I think all cultures have their own sort of forms of play. You know, and ultimately, I really believe that play and improv is sort of the hyper culture or the super culture. It fits into every organized group or every organized people and tradition. And ultimately, like most rituals and cultures were born from improvising them once,
Mhm.
in fact. Like I was at a retreat a few months ago after I did a workshop, and I was just looking up at the stars. And I was like, oh, there's Orion's belt.
Mm.
And I was like, but how do we know this? How do I know this is Orion's belt? Tens of thousands of years after someone, you know, because at some point, more than likely, it was some person in his tribe or community looking at the stars, which was their sort of, late night entertainment, was looking at the stars and, oh, there's Orion with his belt and that's his sword. And, they start, ascribing these stories to the stars.
Mhm.
But at one point, and now they're a culture and now there's a structure around those stories. But initially, it was more than likely improvised
Right?
to start with.
Mhm.
And so what I actually did that night was I asked my cohort, I said, let's play improv with the stars. I go, why don't you guys pick any little group of stars that looks like they might go together? And I want you to make up a name for that group of stars. And I want you to improvise the myth or the story behind them.
Mm.
And we played improv with the stars and we started our own little mini culture and tradition that night.
I love that. That's beautiful. And I mean, you have been leading, sharing these workshops for quite a while now. And I'm certain you must have seen some pretty incredible transformations. And as you spoke about before, not through struggle or breaking down or shadow work, but probably through laughter, through surprise. Can you share with us maybe one or two anecdotes about how you really witnessed an incredible shift in someone?
Yeah, there was one that happened um, fairly recently that was very profound. One of the other things that happens in improv is when you're sort of thrust onto the tip of your own awareness, sometimes you open your mouth and you don't even know what you're going to say.
Right.
Or another way to think of improvisation is like archetypal channeling.
Hmm.
When you walk into a scene and someone says, "Oh, hi, mom, it's nice to see you." Now you're the mom archetype and you're
Yeah.
channeling your inner mother. And you can play with status and stuff like that. You never really know what character you're going to be, archetype you're going to be thrust into. And a lot of times the masks and the characters that we walk around as every day don't encompass our full selves. And so in improv, sometimes you get thrust into this other person, this other character, whatever it is. And I've seen people say the realest things they've ever said in their entire life through the context of an improv scene. And there's been profound healing in these moments too. So I'm always prepared for someone to have a very sincere quantum healing moment that can happen in these scenes. And I'll give you an example. I was teaching and had people in their small pods, and they were sort of self-suggesting ideas. And afterwards, I check in with people to see how everything's going, if there's any like takeaways or hot takes. And this one older lady started crying at the end of a scene. And I asked her what was going on. And she said, in the scene, somebody had a random suggestion that was about schizophrenia. And she got cast and thrust into having to be a schizophrenic person for this scene. And whatever it was, the scene was fine, but she started crying afterwards. And I asked her, what's up? And she says, my son was a schizophrenic. And he took his own life 10 years ago. And this was the first time I've ever got to see through his eyes. And she said, this was like I got a chance to go visit him for the first time in 10 years. In this moment of game and improv, right, she had this quantum healing connection with her own offspring through just embodying a different archetype that she wouldn't have probably ever had a chance to do that. Right. And then it's like what calls that into the moment? How does that even arrive to her in that exact moment?
Yes.
It's what you sort of tapped at the beginning, the mystery.
Yes.
In
That
improv. Yes.
No, please go ahead.
You always have to leave room for the mystery. Because you never know what's going to happen, what you're going to say, or how it's going to get there. And you have to be okay with not always being in control and not always knowing what's going to happen or what you're going to say, right? You're building a resiliency for being okay with the unknown.
Yes, that is really beautiful and profound, Joshua. And I think that's also really at the center of the human condition, to learn how to be okay with the unknown, right? Because we can try to control as much as we can. It's not gonna transmute from that deep-seated fear. The only way is to actually move through it and being okay with the unknown. And what you just shared about this woman was also so beautiful, where, you know, we can experience trauma, we may carry shame, rejection, and I feel that can really sever us from our birthright of play. And reclaiming this is really a sacred type of return, like you described with this woman. And yeah, I'm just smiling because it's so beautiful how the mystery, as he said, how truly we are one with the field, and these moments remind us of that, right? Like, how did that come up for her in the improvisation, right? It's just incredible. And you, if I remember correctly, you once said that when we lose play, we lose the part of ourselves that also knows how to transmute, how to alchemize. And can you speak to how trauma, or especially also shame, interrupts our ability to go with the flow and improvise our life?
Super crucial. Super crucial stuff, right? And this returns back to our auric postures. It's like when you get hit, you know, you go to protect yourself. And that's a natural thing. However, we can get sort of stuck in this posture of protecting or overprotecting ourselves. It's a fear-based posture. While at some point is necessary, you might need to contract, you might need to defend yourself for a period of time. But the thing I look out for in my own life and my trainees' lives is you don't want to make a pattern of that or get stuck there. Now, if we think about just what we think we know about the nature of the universe itself, it's constantly expanding. The nature of the universe is constantly expanding. So for you to be in a pattern of closedness is to be inherently out of alignment with the nature of life itself. Life doesn't want you to contract, it wants you to join it in playful expansion and learning and learning. And and this goes back to like the mystery or source energy itself. Um, in one of my deep medicine experiences, I asked source itself, I was like, so what are you? What is this? What are you? And it was so cheeky. Maybe it's because I'm in comedy, but it was a very cheeky response. The source was like leaned into me and kind of like whispered, it was like, you know what? I don't even know what I am. I don't even know what I am. I know that I am, but I don't know what I am. And so one of the sayings in this, how do we get comfortable in not knowing? Well, it's like if it doesn't even know what it is, then my saying is the only thing I know for certain is that I'll never know for certain.
Mm. Mhm.
And so within that is it's the doctrine of go explore, go check it out, go play with life and begin to understand what you're capable of, what life is about. That's what it wants. It's trying to understand what it is. That's why we're here, so that it can begin to understand what it is. And so you're supposed to be in exploration and play and expansion, you know. And so, yeah, these moments happen in our lives where we take a hit, and it happens to us. It's a part of the experience, but through whatever means makes sense to you, whether it's going to a concert or a fun experience with a friend or going to an improv workshop, or you need to go to a medicine ceremony where it breaks you down and cleans you out. The idea is find a way to get back on your feet and get back into the yesness, get back into the play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not about when you can't do that, the worst thing you can do is actually beat yourself up, right? We all have these moments, as you said. And have you ever found yourself in maybe not just a moment, but a season where play felt unsafe and where it took courage to laugh and to risk your joy again? And if so, what brought you back?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even me, I find moments where I feel shut down and closed off, and there's things or certain people that just, don't feel good to be around. And the thing I know best is to seek out the people that you do feel safe with, the people that you do trust, and like really curate for yourself like a safe, playful experience. Like I'm gonna invite me and my two best bros, and we're gonna go see a concert, or we're gonna go float the river. And it's like whatever little things you can do to build safe, positive neural pathways to repattern, to slowly begin to repattern the nervous system. Like, oh, there are safe people for me to go play with. I can have an adventure and not be looking over my shoulder the whole time. Um, that's my personal tool is I try to find safe people, safe places that I can just like,
Yes.
and let my nervous system and body relax into play again, whatever that might be.
Right. Yes, that is beautiful advice, Joshua. And what do you say to those who feel like they're quote unquote too broken, quote unquote too serious, or too late to re-enter this field of aliveness, playful aliveness and joy?
In this moment, I would offer these people, those people, or you people who might be watching, um, even in that context, the no-ness, the I'm not enough, I'm so hurt. What if you made that a game of yesness? I'm so hurt, they might as well just bury me now. I'm so hurt that I might as not even put clothes on today. I'm so hurt, I'm not gonna brush my teeth. And just like turn that into a game. That's what comedy ultimately is. This is the seed of what laughter is.
Mm.
Comedy, as its core, is a human coping mechanism.
Ah.
It's
Mm.
what we do when we have dense, heavy or dense vibrational weight. And instead of ruminating in our weight, you take that energy and you release it, you transmute it through a lighter, less dense way. So you turn it on its head. Every comedian is some degree depressed or angry, and that's where their jokes come from. It's like I can either sit and ruminate in it or I can make a joke about it.
Mm.
So comedy has been my coping mechanism for times when I feel broken and hurt and everything. And it's like, then how do I turn that itself into the game?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Joshua. I've also witnessed that with friends, particularly those people who have had a lot of trauma in their lives, maybe by their current or former professions, where they're just exposed to a lot of things that are really tough to be exposed to. And those are sometimes the funniest and most irreverent people I've ever met. And I always love exploring the metaphysical and archetypal roots of things, and particularly in preparation of the conversation with you. It's the jester, it's the trickster, it's the cosmic fool, and the relationship to awakening that's there. And I found that across many cultures, whether you look at the Hopi Koshari or Sufis, particularly Mullah Nasruddin, or the Tarot's Fool, where the sacred clown is this vessel for divine paradox. And do you feel yourself as part of that lineage?
Definitely. I've
Mhm.
been sort of wearing that archetype and I feel very at home
Mm.
in that archetype. There's even some in like Lakota or Sioux, they call the Heyoka.
Mhm.
Is a member of a tribe that sort of is the person that sees the world upside down.
Uh-huh.
Um, and there's a lot to say about it. Like, in the term of societal communal dogma, when we get so wrapped in the text of a tradition or something, like we forget about the mystery. We forget that we actually don't know at all what we're doing. And the Heyoka, the comedian, is the person that reminds everybody, hey, look how silly you look, all wrapped up in your certainty.
Yeah.
And then like, you just chuckled, right? This laughter as a phenomena is so effervescent.
Mhm.
We actually know very little about what it is. But the one thing I always return to is that laughter is involuntary,
Yeah.
like breathing.
Mhm.
It happens to you. It's
And
not
through
something,
you.
and through you and to you. Not something that we try to do. It's very much like a cosmic phenomena.
Mm.
And so I rest in, yeah, being the person that reminds everyone that we don't know what we're doing. Dave Chappelle has a great quote, one of my favorite quotes of all time. Dave Chappelle says, "The role of comedy in society is to rectify paradox."
Mm.
As in to like see the way something ought to be versus the way we are,
Mhm.
and to sort of point at it
Mhm.
and just
Mhm.
go, do you see that? Don't you see how silly this is?
Yeah.
That we're so wrapped up in this thing, we don't even know what we're doing. And through pointing at it, right, become awareness. And that little moment where your mind clicks in to the sort of eternal truth behind the joke, enlightenment happens, and that's when laughter happens. It's when we click into the eternal truth behind it.
Yes. And that's something I've always loved the archetype of the fool. It's always spoken to me, but not as foolishness, but actually encoded wisdom. There is something though I'd like to illuminate a little further. I'm curious, in your experience, is there a time where irreverence becomes distortion?
Definitely. Definitely. You know, the fool is necessary. And you know, the old thing about court and court jester is the only person that can make fun of the king is the
Yeah.
jester, is the fool. And we look at America, and America is the world center for comedy and foolery because it's not even really permitted in a lot of the world. A show like Saturday Night Live, high level political satire, is
Mhm.
outlawed in most of the world because it criticizes those in power.
Mm.
So when I think about comedy, when I think about political satire, like
Mhm.
America is the world's greatest iteration of things, I believe. But your question was about at what point does that cross over and become something that creates
Distortion.
distortion
Mhm.
or destabilization?
Mhm.
Um, it has a lot to do with intention and where it comes from. The simplest way to do it in my mind, the simplest way to discern that in my mind is um, without going too much into story or naming people, I think that there's a very distinct difference between laughing with someone and
Mm.
laughing at someone.
Yeah.
Um, Laughing at someone is bullying
Yes.
or causing foolery to to disenfranchise someone in some way. That's bullying.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot in our political climate right now where people are laughing for the wrong reasons. But real jester, real fool, real heyoka doesn't necessarily has a target, but it's not designed to take anyone down. You know, lampooning is something we can do. You can lampoon status,
Mhm.
and that's a huge role of comedy and laughter. But ultimately, it's about laughing with each other, right?
Yeah.
That's why when you hear roasts, people that are roasting each other, they say you only roast the ones you love. But then you can say the meanest things you can think of as long as like you're in a caring intimacy with them. Then you can say the meanest things you want because they know that we're laughing with each other.
Yes. Those are also some of the most beautiful experiences with true friends. I mean, yeah, it's when there's real love and connection and when your loved ones just roast you. It's so liberating too, to do that with each other. It's a beautiful thing. And yeah, I think the role of the cosmic jester or trickster is often not fully perceived how important it is, right? And it's actually one of I believe, one of the most powerful forces, right? The flow, the laughter, the improvisation, the holding up mirrors to what is, speaking truth to power. And yeah, you've walked a uncommon path, so to speak. And I'm also using that as a segue into another uncommon journey that you've taken very much in the public eye. And what I'm referring to is people who know about you. They may also know about your deep friendship with Aubrey Marcus and the relationship you have, the love you have with also his wife, Vailana. And I feel that from my perspective, this stopping the flow of something, stopping the improvisation of life, stopping the improvisation of love, it chokes humanity, right? This one prescription for all. And if you're willing to share, Joshua, I would love to learn from you as a not just as a podcast host, but as a human being and as a listener, and knowing how much judgment can surround the cultural ideas of love and what people think, for example, polyamory is. I would love to learn from you, Joshua. What have you learned about love as an expanding field versus something that's prescriptive and constrictive?
Mm, mm. Well, I'll start by saying that where my personal sort of place in love is, I think that we can get a lot of people get stuck looking at or listening to the four letters that make the word love. And we don't focus enough on the phenomena. We get stuck on the labels.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a joke I used to do. It's like, what's the fastest way to confuse a room full of people? Say you love God. Because if there's a room full of 100 people, 100 of those people are going to have a different relationship with the word love and a different relationship with the word God. And now everybody in the room is on a different page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we have to find our personal relationship with the phenomena and not the language, not the words, not the dogma behind any new age prescription or any old age prescription, the traditional Christian values or whatever the new age spirituality thing is. I think it's about engaging with life itself. And ultimately, like, that's what all of our great revelations have been. I like to say, I'm tangenting a little bit, but one of my great sayings is, what me and Jesus have in common? Neither of us read the Bible.
Okay. I love that.
It's about engaging with life itself with genuine curiosity and genuine receptiveness to what feels good and true for you. And then ultimately, in that situation, particularly with Aubrey and Vi, it was just like very honest and authentic. Hey, it feels really good to be around you.
Yeah.
Hey, this is really fun and nice. I agree. hey, this, and just, yes and, yes and. I
Mm.
agree.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, does that kind of like gives you a little bit of how I approach it, at least.
Yeah. And I love how you also, how the yes and also flowed into that. That's beautiful. Um, Something that when I became aware of you and your work that really also resonated with me is that from an outsider's perspective and learning about you, it seems like you really live sacred brotherhood and you have deep connections with other men that go beyond, way beyond the typical bro culture. I think I just saw on Trevor Noah did an incredible little monologue about men and how what really ails so many men nowadays, and speaking about male loneliness epidemic, and that phrase that gets thrown around a lot, is that there's really a lack of intimacy. We're not talking sexual, but a lack of intimacy for men. And most men have learned to connect with intimacy via sex, but not necessarily to be emotionally, intellectually, energetically intimate also with other men, just have deep friendships, such as for many women might be normal. And I think it's such a beautiful thing what comes across when when I learned more about you. And I'd like to know, how can men who are listening right now, and if they're desirous of doing so, how can do you actually create this type of sacred brotherhood or a community that is a safe and strong and supportive space for men?
Such a beautiful question. And I think, yeah, there's definitely an air about our culture right now that's sort of searching for answers and searching for solutions for this kind of thing. I won't claim to know everything, but my suggestions would be things like healthy competition.
Mm-hmm.
Aubrey and I met playing basketball together.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a way for you to find a rec league or a few buds that want to get together and compete a little bit, maybe it's card games or it doesn't have to be basketball or whatever it is. But men need something to sharpen their swords. Iron sharpens iron. And so it feels really good to compete with your brothers in a healthy way because so much of our lives are competition as men, even when you go to work, even competing for lanes on the highway to make it somewhere in time. Healthy competition is so healing and nourishing for men because it taps into your primal warrior. But then as soon as you leave the court, you get to shake hands with your brothers and go have a meal and sort of laugh about it. You also get a lot of those endorphins out that, if you don't get those endorphins out, they're going to come up at a time when you get provoked, maybe by someone you love or at your job or something like that. So it's important to sort of exercise those parts of you in a healthy way so that you're in training of that muscle. You're in control of that muscle, and it's not in control of you. Um, as it regards to like more intimacy, it's so funny because I, have in the last few years experienced some more of these like adult um, nights where people go together and couples come and maybe like people will explore a little bit intimacy with each other in an expanded way. But it's so funny because I often find that I feel way more intimately connected to people after I play improv games with them
Uh-huh.
than when I do at any of these other intimacy events,
Mhm.
because there's different types of intimacy.
Yeah.
And when you play in a safe way with your mind, with other people, and you cooperate and you laugh with someone,
Mhm.
right? There's an old quote by Victor Borg who says, laughter is the shortest distance between two people. And I find that when you get together and you laugh and you guys are co-creating something together, I feel more intimately connected with those people than I do at any other activity that I've ever done.
Mhm.
So, I do believe that improv is a great way for men, for couples, to find a safe pattern of deeper intimacy with each other, communication, listening and responding. And if you're someone who's tried, play parties or these other intimacy events, and it's not like really clicking for you, this is a safer way to do it. And in my opinion, it's more potent than
Mhm.
those ones. And those events, intimacy events, I won't speak too much on it, but you're always 1 degree away from like re-traumatizing yourself in those events. And so if you're not really clear about what you're doing or not really clear with the person or people that you're going with, you might do more damage than good.
Yeah.
That's,
Mhm.
that's how I feel.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until it's not. And I think, like with other things as well, setting matters. Your own mindset, what is actually the scene, who is in it, who's participating, and who is holding the space. And has there been deep communication and exchange prior, before going into that experience, so that you can flow freely, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes the best improvisation or flowing with each other happens if you really communicated about at least a certain type of structure or boundaries before, whether those are the more sexual play parties or other experiences. Um, it makes a lot of sense what you said. I think, yes, improvisation, especially for all of us, but also for men, could really be great medicine. And what you shared about healthy competition, I learned from others who work in the space that, particularly for men, being active and doing something, right, which is also tied to testosterone, is is a very conducive way to bring forth deeper connections. Whereas for women, it might be very much also a focus on deep communication initially to release oxytocin. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
to circle back to improvisation, and also as a kind of a closing chord to this beautiful conversation, Joshua, if you could invite the world into a final improv game, one that would recalibrate humanity's frequency, what may that look like?
Great question. I have the answer for you.
Okay.
Before we are honest with each other,
Mhm.
we must play the improv game of being honest with ourselves.
Ooh.
So there's a thing you see in improv when somebody will suggest something, but again, improv is life. So maybe you see this in life. Somebody will say something to someone, and then you'll see them self judge what
Mm.
they're going to say. And they'll say something that is a whitewashed version or something maybe totally different than what they would have naturally said.
Mhm.
And in an improv scene, they're like, well, I didn't want to deny what the suggestion was. And so instead of saying I didn't like it, I just said, oh yeah, that feels good. But again, improv is about the truth in comedy. So you're not, even if you're saying that I don't like that, that's not a denial. You're actually saying yes to your truth.
Right.
You're saying yes to your authenticity.
Mm.
That is what we really mean by yes and. It's not by censoring yourself. It's about being honest with yourself. You know what's really funny when someone says, "Do you want to go to the supermarket?" And they're like, "I fucking hate the supermarket." It can be very funny to be that honest. And in fact, that's some of the magic of some of our politicians that have this sort of psychic spell over people, is
Yes.
that they're so in their authenticity, they're in their yes,
Yes.
that it reads as, authenticity or whatever.
Yeah, and it's a
So
feeling. Mhm.
yeah, that's my prescription.
Mm.
My prescription for us all is to be honest with ourselves. And
Mhm.
if you don't like something, don't think about it as saying I'm being the person that's saying no to something. You're saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to your truth. Because we need to be in that yes, because otherwise we look out at the world and we see all the paradox. We see a world that's in contrast with itself constantly. But how does it get that way? It gets that way when we are individually are in paradox with ourselves.
Mhm.
When we have an inner truth that we don't let out, that we augment and change, now we are living a living paradox of ourselves. And when we collectively stifle our truths, we are collectively living in a paradox, and thus the world around us becomes a paradox itself.
Yeah.
So I believe it begins with being honest with ourselves, saying yes to our truths, trusting the things we have to say, and then trusting each other to handle or to hold
Yes.
our truths,
Mm.
and building a collective resiliency to being honest with each other.
Yeah. Amen to that, Joshua. Yes. Thank you for this, and thank you for making time. I really enjoyed the conversation with you. For people who would like to connect with you, work with you, learn more about you, how can they do so?
Yeah, I would direct people to my website, which is joshdraper.me. And it's got my improv workshops listed, my mission statements, and testimonials for the people that have gone through some of my workshops and programs. You can also connect with me through social media on Instagram at True Joshua Draper. And send me a hey if you have a question or an idea, or you want to drop in, you want to invite me to your retreat to do an opening improv activation to get everybody connected. That's one of my specialties. But we also do things simple like birthday parties and house parties and just like other ways to have fun and maybe you haven't tried in a while. I'm here for it.
That sounds amazing, Joshua. We'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes as well. I'm very grateful to you for joining Superhumanize today. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for having me. Great conversation.
Superhumanize. Accelerated evolution.